Welcome out to another episode of It's All Been Trucked Before. This time, the Icarus Factor. Yeah, you know this show has flown too close to the sun many a time and got burnt. But you won't get burnt listening to this episode. You know where else you can really rise and get close to the sun? Patreon.com/IABD. That's how you support the network. That's how you get the bonus content. That's how you become part of this community. But like I said, we're not going to let you fly too close to that sun. Let's see what... You saw the episode. Let's talk more about Icarus on the Icarus Factor on It's All Been Trucked Before.
Welcome out to another episode of It's All Been Trucked Before. Normal crew is here.
This is Steven.
And Keith.
Jimmy-Jerome. We're here to talk the Icarus Factor. Let's start with first impressions.
Yeah, this follows some familiar territory, but I thought this is one with an A and a B storyline. I found them all engaging and interesting. I don't know that it's a great episode, but I definitely kept my interest, and there was a lot to dig into, I guess. Maybe not high sci-fi concepts, but more character things, obviously.
Mm-hmm. You know, I made a note very, very similar to that, almost like verbatim, really. And I felt like it ended up being almost like a better sci-fi episode than a lot of them because of the way they did it so casually. Mm-hmm. It was more of an Orville-style story, if you will, just the idea of them just examining how life still works, the similarities between the way it works in the present and the way it works in the future, and just like the little differences that make it futuristic without it having to focus on look at all these weird aliens, look at this weird technology. It is just this is everyday life with these people. This is how an alien culture, like for Worf, would translate into being like the only minority in certain situations.
I agree. I think it was, it was good. It was enjoyable. Not super high concept, but I liked it. Good character stuff for the most part, although some of the dad stuff was a little cheesy, but we'll get to that.
Yeah.
This episode was directed by Robert Iskov. This was his only episode of Star Trek he directed. I thought he did fine. Mm-hmm. I don't know that I really noticed the direction that much. It was a story by David Asiel, looks like. I don't know. This is the only Star Trek credit he's got as well. And then he just has a story by... Oh, and then he also teleplay by him and Robert McCullough, who is best known for being a producer on The Next Generation. So I guess he helped him out there. And Robert McCullough also wrote an episode called The Samaritan Snare that's coming up later this season, so we can judge him a little more on that one. So we start out, Riker is offered captainship of the Ares. I remember Riker was offered captainships during The Next Generation. I didn't remember one came so early. He just became first officer like a year and a half ago. Do you think this was too soon?
It makes sense because, he's been kicking out the jams, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
I guess I don't know how promotions work in Starfleet.
I made that was my first note verbatim was, it's reasonable that Riker will be offered a ship sooner than later given his performance this season. That was a weird, kind of funny that you both said that. It's just...
But I guess serving as XO on the flagship makes you a lot more visible than XO in most ships.
That too.
I did think it was interesting, Picard congratulating him immediately. I wondered if it was Picard covering up his feelings, but it sincerely felt in this episode that Picard was like, yep, you're done. Okay, bye. Good job. Congratulations. It didn't feel like Picard was bittersweet about it.
Yeah, I kind of go with your first instinct, which is it's kind of one of those things where you're like, man, I don't want to tell this person they shouldn't leave, but I don't want to be the person that makes them stay here when this is the thing they should do and they're going to love it. Kind of thing. I'm thinking more of a relationship kind of a thing. So it could have been some of that too, but I don't want to affect your decision. Although I guess that's kind of insane in this situation for me to be like, well, I don't want to influence his decision since I'm such a great captain and he loves being around me, but that ended up being part of the equation. By the way, you're getting a promotion, you're switching ships, you're going to this weird, crazy place that's completely different. You got 12 hours to think about it. It's like, what? So I just wrote down a clock is set. And as false constructs go, I didn't feel it didn't bother me. But it just kind of was like, all right, we know where what this episode's about for the most part, and I feel like I kept waiting for some other annoying thing to happen, like, oh, the Romulans or the Klingons are coming to Starbase Montgomery, and that didn't happen, which I kind of liked. So this was actually the issue. There's Worf's thing too, but and while we're on Starbase Montgomery, I don't remember any other Starbase not having a number. Or maybe it has a number. Maybe they all have numbers, but they also have names attached to them.
I'm not sure. honestly.
Starbase Johnson, Starbase Woosley, which is Starbase 9432.
9,469.
Before we get too far away from that whole point with Picard,
Yeah.
First of all, that was I was impressed by that too, and I think that goes into the thing I was noting before, the idea that they didn't try to pack too much other stuff in this. This was the issue. That's how life works. There's this thing that's going on, and it just so happens that they didn't have to have some other artificially inflated thing, like some danger to inject into the situation to make it any more exciting or vital than just that. Even if just as the audience we probably wouldn't buy it necessarily that he was going to leave, but it still felt like they were taking it seriously. And going back to Picard's reaction, that is, I think, what the layman would call classy. The move was magnanimous. He was like, you know what? I'm going to approach this from letting you off the hook right now, so we don't have to have this thing about you considering my feelings. This is how I feel about it. I'm happy for you. Make your decision.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, to me, it felt like it wasn't even a decision. Like Picard and everybody else just assumed he was taking it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a reasonable assumption to make, in my opinion, because who turns down a captainship? Very few people. I mean, Picard picked this guy for a reason. He handpicked Riker. They made a point of saying that at the beginning of the series. And, that he would only stay a year and a half just seems totally in character with the type of person Picard would pick as his first officer. So I liked that. I bought it, but I just wish Picard would have showed just a hint more of regret sometime in the episode.
Mm-hmm. And they did throw in that conflict of that mission was kind of it's way out there and it's whatever, but that also part of that is like, well, you'll be way out here, but the other part is Riker is really good at that, or it feels like obviously they all think he'd be good at that. So
right, absolutely.
Well, I mean, we've seen him do some pretty cool things with away missions, especially this season, especially the thing with essentially being the first officer, almost the captain. Well, I guess essentially taking over the captainship in the Klingon ship, which was amazing. Mm-hmm. Which even before we got to the heart of what was bothering Worf, it felt like Worf could have just missed Riker, respected him, and wanted to join in on that type of adventure without even tying it into like a birthday thing, midlife crisis, whatever. It felt like he would have naturally felt like being adventurous as well. Like he, obviously he gets into some stuff being on the flagship, but to really know that you're going out there to really do something dangerous should appeal to him.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I mentioned the 12 hours thing, and then later he's like, I'm going to need more time. Like, okay. So, and I'm not mad about that. I think that's a good thing. It's a sensible thing, which is, I think for a narrative, it's a great idea. Hey, you got 12 hours. Oh, crap, this is getting real. And then, hey, I'm going to need more time. Yeah, okay, that makes sense. We're not idiots.
That's how life works too.
Yeah,
I mean,
exactly.
In real life, it wouldn't, they would give you like an initial time frame. Here's what we would like you to think about in this amount of time for something that important. You wouldn't go, okay, it's midnight on the dot, either now or never.
Yeah.
Well, you blew it, kid. No, you would want somebody who really thought things through and said, I want to do this because of this. Yeah. I mean, why would you?
I mean, because Riker's goal is to be captain, I just didn't think he'd need the time, honestly. But if he needed the time, then I think 12 hours was a reasonable amount of time. I don't think most people spend days deciding if they want to be captain when that's what they've been working towards in their career.
Yeah.
No, there is that, but there's also, I mean, I think they explored the balance of what was going on there. When his father got down to it, no, it was Picard. Wow, I don't remember exactly. Anyway, somebody was having this discussion with Riker and kind of breaking it down for him. The idea that, sure, you're going to be a captain, but you're also going to be obscure. You're going to be out here on the edge of everything. You're just going to take you months to get there. Yeah, it was Picard. They came back and did. I remember that now. I love that conversation, actually, the way he broke that down. Just the idea that I think what he said toward the end of that, you are going to have this obscure little thing, but it's going to quickly become
yours.
Yeah, it's going to be, for lack of a better word, or to paraphrase, seasoned with your flavor of leadership. And it's going to become it's going to become a family in that sense of,
No, I like that a lot. I think the other thing with Picard not showing a lot of emotion is at this point, Picard is still stayed above the crew and hasn't bonded with the crew in the way that he will in later years. And so, especially in the films. So I could see that he's treating Riker as a professional colleague who he likes, but isn't like bonded to like a best friend. I did start to write, where's O'Brien at one point early on, I guess because everybody else was gathered around, but he was in the episode like almost right after that. So that was kind of a throwaway. That was interesting. And this comes later and it could be kind of what we talked about last week of maybe people were just all at work. But when Riker needed somebody to talk to in 10 Forward to like really discuss things, it was O'Brien that he went to. And I thought that was interesting, I guess. I mean, O'Brien's been a big presence here in season 2 all of a sudden. And it's nice to know they got friends besides the senior staff that are still like part of it, you know?
It almost seems like he's like the regular guy on the ship.
Well, he's enlisted, remember? He's still wearing that lieutenant pips, which bothers the heck out of me. But he's that non-commissioned. But he was also, I don't know, his history is confusing. I tried to look online for some more clarification about the rank stuff, and I just was getting conflicting things. There's not a canon explanation, but I guess he was a tactical officer on a ship before he came to the Enterprise and became transporter chief. And a tactical officer, like a security chief, that would make me think he had to have a rank, and then maybe he gave it up. Yeah. I'm not sure, though. I liked all the talk about the father. Riker hadn't seen his dad in 15 years, which I thought was huge, but I mean, I guess when you're older and you're out in the galaxy, I don't know. But then, of course, his father seemed to know everybody on the Enterprise. It was not just Pulaski, but like was greeting random crewmen too.
I wrote, it's a small galaxy.
Yeah.
Well, maybe it was 15 Mercury years instead of 15 Earth years. So maybe that hadn't been that long.
I think it was Earth years.
I do too.
Worf never knew his father, which I think was an interesting point. I'm not sure we quite knew that yet. We know he was young, but not a baby when his parents died. So I would think he knew his father a little bit, but
I wrote we have a lot of dead parents in this galaxy.
Well, Wesley's father's dead too, you know?
Right. And I feel like this is like falling into the superhero kind of trope. Yep.
Or a Disney character.
Yeah. So, I mean, I get it. A lot of these characters are older, so it makes sense that, okay, you're at a certain age, your parents will be past, but a lot of them make the point that, oh, yeah, they've been dead a long time.
But we'll see them. Like, we'll see Worf's adoptive parents. We saw Riker's father. We obviously know Wesley's mother. So we get some parents in there.
Yeah, I mean, they did come from something. They weren't all just, they were all just growing up in orphanages. But there was also
and Troy's mother. Sorry, I don't know how I overlooked that one.
Yeah.
The idea that, if you have a secondary family, so to speak, it's likely to be populated with people who have unconventional, families themselves. Like their biological families are probably unconventional. Mm-hmm. They're likely to be able to commit to like something as serious as a flagship and just make that their whole life.
That makes sense.
Oh yeah, they're nobody's serving on the Enterprise that goes home for family dinner every Sunday.
Yeah, although there are families on the Enterprise.
Yes, that's
so
true.
Some of them do.
That's true.
Their home is on the 7th deck or whatever.
And one of the characters in this episode, who's been featured heavily this season, will get his own family here in a few years. So that's exciting. Geordi really made the party all about himself, didn't he? Threw his own little pity party there. Not an attractive side of Geordi.
I don't remember what was going on.
Sulking. He was sulking when everybody else was like celebrating for Riker.
Huh. My memory of him mostly was just like him being the voice of reason about like, hey, maybe we shouldn't like try to bother Worf. He was the audience member.
Oh, that's later in the episode. This is the Riker stuff.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
It could have had something to do with his other B story, C story, I guess, with the performance of the of the ship itself or engineering or whatever was going on there. The fine tuning they were doing, the evaluation, which didn't really hit home until I made a note, which I actually laughed out loud at the conversation when he had like just that little bit with Geordi, O'Brien, and Data. Mm-hmm. Them kind of not quite ribbing him, but kind of giving you that kind of feeling of Scotty would have the professional pride in the ship, that whole thing about like defending the Enterprise, And just the idea that something could possibly be wrong with the ship that needed to be fixed by outside intervention was really bothering him. Even though that they they teased at the beginning that it wouldn't bother him, but just as they've got further along, and then just him, I guess maybe sulking for that reason.
Yeah, I didn't feel like that came or played into this scene at all. But I do like that bit of Geordi's story, and I like that they didn't have to make it a big deal. It was a few lines here and there, and then it was kind of over. And Geordi came out triumphant, but it wasn't. Gave him something to do. I don't know.
Yeah, well, I mean, I mostly just the wording of how that played out I thought was really funny. Just a good translation of an everyday kind of coworker relationship where there's a little bit of professional ribbing going on, but translated into sci-fi terms.
Another character that I thought got a nice little tiny bit of development in this episode, but was Pulaski. The history with Riker's dad, and then in the middle of that, we find out that she's been married 3 times, and yet she's still friends with all her ex-husbands.
Oh, that was a great use of the character.
A really interesting fact about her.
That was her and Daddy Riker is my favorite Pulaski scene by far. I was like, hey, Dinah Muldaur's here, and that's faint praise because she's done good stuff in other episodes too, and I love her. But yeah, I was like, I like this person a lot.
I thought the 3 husbands that I'm still friends with was such an interesting specific fact that is not something I ever would have thought of for her, but it also made total sense with her personality. Like somehow it worked. I didn't double take at it. I was like, oh, okay. 3 times. Still friends. Interesting. Let's talk about Kyle Riker a little bit. He was played by Mitchell Ryan, who's best known for Grosse Point Blank, Halloween, The Curse of Michael Myers, Liar Liar, Lethal Weapon. Or Edward Montgomery and Dharma and Greg.
Lethal Weapon is exactly what I thought of. I was like, that's the general from Lethal Weapon.
Or the dad from Dharma and Greg.
Keep talking about the package. Yeah, I immediately wanted to shoot him because that's how much I hated him in Lethal Weapon. He was great in that. So he's okay in this. It's not the best written thing. He does some good things here. But
I like him. I agree with you about the writing. I really felt if you're this type of personality that is, as he's been described in the backstory we gave him, he doesn't all of a sudden get into I love yous and that vocal by the end of this episode.
Yeah.
I get it's been a while. Maybe if he were dying, I would buy it, but he's not dying. I guess at this point he thinks he's not going to see Riker for a long time and Riker might die. But it still didn't come, I don't know, I felt like he was too emotionally open for the way they'd painted him.
Yeah, I think it's like, because I think, I said false construct, but like you said, Jimmy, I think you mentioned, Jimmy, the Riker thing, it feels, even though we all know he's not leaving the Enterprise, whether you were watching this in 89 or 2 nights ago, we know he's not leaving, but it's still effective because I think everyone plays it the right way. Whereas I think
in 89 though, he wasn't leaving because Yar left, Crusher left.
Oh, that's true. Wait, who was the first name you said?
Yeah, So we lost 2 characters in the first season.
Well, yeah, that was me. That was me saying that before. That was me saying that there before at the beginning about the audience coming in. We probably know he's not going to go, but getting back to your point about it and not really ringing true for the character that they were trying to portray for Kyle. What we're seeing is not really the way that Will would have seen him growing up, but rather the way that he looks to everybody in the office. Your dad has a different persona when he's around all his colleagues, and he has to keep up this kind of appearance of being this stand-up guy, right?
Yeah.
So Commander Riker, Will just keeps kind of trying to cut through that every time he's encountering them along with somebody else. We're in this professional setting. Cut the crap, Dad. I know what you're really like. I don't feel like going through this. It's not until we get to the very end, not the very end, but the climax of them hashing it out that he's going to take him seriously, or at least say that break down the defenses of what's going on there. Something jitsu, some alien or future word jitsu, which I thought was
Japanese.
Fun.
So
it's a mashup of Japanese terms. Yeah.
I mean, was the first part something real? Was it like Mambo Jitsu or something like that, or Mamba?
I don't know.
I read it, but I don't remember.
The music in that climax was just And the dialogue, "I'm no father, you are no son, and this fight is all we have left."
Oh, wow, I didn't catch that.
That was part of the dialogue. It felt really weird. It felt really odd. And I kept thinking, my dad is a very taciturn man. He and I didn't connect until we were adults. And even then, I grew up not liking him, even though we had some good times. But I guess I'm projecting my own dad on this. And I'm like, my dad's never going to tell me I love you and that sort of thing. That's just not who he is. And so that's part of why I didn't buy Kyle Riker saying it.
I wrote at the end, that completely makes sense, because I wrote at the end, it was just like good man talk, because it was just like, grr, let's beat each other up and da-da-da, and not really share anything, but still be like, I respect you and I love you. It's like, okay, well, okay. But
and Riker being so harsh of saying you should have been the one to die, not her. I'm sorry. I know childhood can make you say things that are out of character with your adult self. I still had a hard time believing Commander Riker would say that.
My bit about that was I said I wasn't really sure how I felt about the manly violence trope thing.
Yeah, human males are unique.
Yeah,
I hated that.
That's certainly dated to the time period. The me man you woman kind of thing about it, and even they even had the bit with Troy and Pulaski, which I probably was kind of sort of remembering when you started talking about the Bechdel fail last week. This was a lot more of that feel of like we're relating to them in terms of, oh, men are so awful, but we have this romantic interest, which kind of makes them sexy because of that kind of thing. That
they
was
never
really
grow up, and
that was really the spirit of that the Bechdel fail for me.
Keith, you're talking about the only reason our species continues.
But I think it was odd that they singled out as part of that it's human males that act like that.
Yeah. Klingon males have much better ways to deal with this.
We'll get to that subplot in a minute.
That goes along with the sci-fi trope or rather what I'm saying, the sci-fi translation of the characterization for it. But my point is, though, that they're suggesting that we will never evolve beyond that ideal of we have to engage in violence to express these emotions.
And they're talking about competitiveness, father-son. Kyle was cheating in the thing. And I thought it was very interesting when Troy went to Kyle and was flattering him, and then turns on him weirdly when he's talking about what Riker values most. Well, he values honesty most, and all that. I just thought there was a lot of weirdness in how they danced around that.
I liked it. I guess I was more entertained because of, I think there was an appropriate turn that happened there. I think that they came into that, and she was there was that kind of, again, this is the workplace veneer thing. This is the I'm a good stand-up guy thing that he's approaching her with, and even kind of, I think where she drew the line was when he kind of tried to do that little flirt with her. The idea of commenting on his taste in women, kind of dropping that, they're getting past that veil of, he's sort of acknowledging, I know who you are to him, and also trying to pull her into that kind of, I'm such a great, charming guy, where she just dropped it right then. I think that was the shift that happened, where she was like, I'm not having that. We're gonna get to the root of why you aren't as great a guy as you're trying to pretend to be.
I did wonder about the jiu-jitsu contest. Why was that public knowledge that they were gonna have that? Because that was a private arrangement, and then people seem to know about it. But it's like, Kyle's not telling people, Riker's not telling people, he's telling people. I don't understand.
It's like when two kids are gonna fight in junior high at 3:00
somebody has to know to spread it. Somebody has to know to spread it, unless somebody was hiding behind Riker's couch.
Okay, that's an excellent point. But my thought at the time was either Riker said something to O'Brien or some other confidant or something, and that immediately there's the grapevine thing, or they had to register time with the.
That would be more.
You're like, we're going to use the ring for this purpose.
And Riker's so used to filling out those forms completely, he doesn't bother to leave the purpose off. Grunge match with my dad.
Something.
Did you like the fight itself with the being blind and having to do? I felt like it had to be pretty well choreographed.
I thought that too. Yeah. I thought that made it more interesting than it deserved.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah, there was that, and also, if you're going to bother to come up with this fictional name for another Jitsu, you might as well do something interesting or something that we haven't seen before, something that would definitely be a future flavor to it that we haven't gotten to yet.
Mm-hmm.
And that is certainly something that I don't think we've seen or would see in real life for a while. The idea of putting blinders on and going at it.
Yeah, I wrote, and we're in the fashion part of the episode, I thought the outfits were fantastic. They were very of that time, and so maybe I'm looking back and thinking, right now, those would look really cool. But having I'm going to use Star Wars term, the blast shield down made it very force heavy.
I thought they stepped out of Tron.
Oh, that's a good reference. Yeah, that's a good reference too. It makes more sense once I looked it up, kind of, that they took, and it sounded like it obviously, but that they mashed together Japanese words, that they had all the Japanese language on them. But I wonder if the Japanese words on their uniform, on the fighting uniforms, were like the bad Chinese tattoos we see.
Oh God! That occurred to me.
This is honor, but it means snow piece.
That sort of occurred to me. Well, yeah, they showed that the aerial view of that mat.
Yeah,
and they had the huge characters. Yeah, just right there along the sides of the mat that they're fighting on. I wondered what the actual translation of that would be.
So is that a holodeck thing or not?
I'm not sure if it was a holodeck thing or one of their gymnasiums.
Well, from the conversation they had, it sounded as though it was a physical thing that was dedicated, that was on one of the decks.
Yeah, you're right.
And so, which implies that this is a more mainstream or popular pastime among the people in the future.
I mean, Picard's got his fencing arena there that he uses. Maybe the captain and the first officer both get to pick like what one of the gyms are. This was Riker's game.
Oh, that makes sense.
Yeah.
I don't know. There's a few different explanations that could work. The other notes I have about Riker's story before we jump over to Worf's story, I thought the fishing tale was kind of interesting. I don't remember what it was, but I wrote down that I thought it was interesting. I thought the picture of the city in Alaska that Riker showed looked like it was really built up, which was kind of surprising because is Alaska really going to be built up in the 24th century all that much? But then, at this rate with climate change, it's going to be a beach. We're all going to move to Alaska.
Oh man, that's that is a realistic and sobering thought.
It is.
Especially if you, it's funny when things like that kind of come up, and you wonder if the writers were aware of that kind of problem or thought it through in that way.
They knew about the hole in the ozone.
I feel like I feel like we've had several climate change references. So that's it.
Yeah, that was definitely going on back then. But the rest of the picks were wilderness picks, so I guess only that city's built up and there's still plenty of wilderness.
I had a deer go through my driveway this morning, so we're almost halfway there.
Honestly, so it brings me back to Star Trek Picard again. When we next check in with Riker after the series and the movies are over, he's living in a cabin in the woods by a lake, and it's very much like the pictures of the Alaska stuff he shows. He's not on Earth. He's on an alien planet. But it reminds me that, these people must have looked back and, brought it all back around. Riker's cooking, and he's in a cabin in the woods, and these are all things that tie back to stuff we know about Riker from the early days. And I like that. I like that through line.
It makes me think of all the actors and not necessarily athletes, but Phil Jackson, he's a great NBA coach. I hate every team he's coached, but I got to take my hat off to him. This is the sports part of the podcast. But, there's a lot of actors that have homes in Jackson Hole, Wyoming, and they'll have tons of acres. And I think they sit in their house like that with nobody around, even though they know their next door neighbor is Bruce Willis, but they never have to see them or anybody else. So maybe that makes sense. That's what people want to retire to.
Well, there's more of a story explanation for why Riker and Troy are living in the woods on an alien planet. That's beyond just retiring. But
okay.
Yeah, it's still, I like that they found someplace like what he grew up with.
I'm going to go back to Pulaski and Riker's dad. And they actually brought this up. So first I wrote down, how did Pulaski never mention to Riker that she was involved with her dad? And then he asked her, and she says, it never came up. I'm calling BS. And I know you guys have more quote unquote common names than me, but if somebody meets me and they know another Woosley, they're gonna be like, "Are you related to this Woosley?" Even if that Woosley lives in Brazil, it doesn't matter. You're gonna ask it, and in that, I know
and she didn't need to ask because it was very clear that she knew who his son was.
Yeah, so that's
she knew the whole time.
It's disingenuous, Pulaski.
All right, no, I mean, are you saying that the writing is disingenuous or that the character was disingenuous?
Pulaski's disingenuous.
Okay, yeah,
she knows.
That's fair.
Yeah. It never came up as an excuse.
I will say that she probably just didn't want to talk about it. So
I agree.
Which is interesting because she's friends with all her exes, but maybe. But she also seemed like she knew Kyle well enough that she probably knew it was a sore subject and maybe just didn't want to get into it.
She never. That too. She never talks to the children of the men she has sex with. Maybe that's her thing. I mean, she never talks to them about the men she has sex with.
Unless they're her own children, maybe.
Oh, my goodness.
That's an arbitrary and capricious rule, but maybe that's her rule. Sorry, I'm trying to hit the notes. I'm trying to move. I know we're trying to move through.
Sorry.
Go ahead, Jimmy.
I was going to say my last Riker note is just about him turning down the promotion. I felt like it was almost anticlimactic that he was just like, oh, personal, motivated self-interest. I wanted him to at least give us a little bit more than that. You know?
That's what I wrote. Why? But really, why? Because he's just like, he kind of comes in and is like, well, you know why. I mean, he doesn't say that, but he kind of intimates that. But yeah, why? Because to go back to your point, Jimmy, about, earlier, like, well, what he always wanted was a Starship Command. Why wouldn't he take it? If I got offered a part in Star Trek Discovery, and I was like, you know what, I'm going to stay here because I want to stick with Mad Lab, you guys would be like, what is wrong with you? Yeah. So, I mean, even if it was, it's just a recurring part for 7 weeks, you'd still be like, what? Wait, why did you say no? Well, I thought I might lose my job. No. Why?
I don't think that's analogous here, though. I think it's more like, it's like you're already.
Think I can get cast in Discovery? Thank you, Keith.
No, what I'm saying here is I think it's more like you're already on Star Trek Discovery, but you're like in a supporting role, but then leaving it to go to like a cable show, some other show, maybe in like a different app as the lead role.
That's more fair. If I was the janitor if Riker was the janitor on the Enterprise and they offered the captainship, that'd be more accurate.
Any other Riker notes, or are we ready to jump over to the Worf story?
I love the scene with him and Troy. And I think that's the one scene that really sells me on okay, I'm pretty sure he's coming back. Well, obviously I know it's 2020. I know he's coming back. But their scene was great. And I teared up. I know I was watching it late and I'd had some drinks, but I teared up during that scene. And I liked when she said, I can't read you, which kind of, that really equates to the whole man fighting thing later, but it works for that scene. And I think she's the one who says, lower your shields. Is that scene? I think she was like,
I don't quite recall.
I think so.
So I love that scene.
I think it might have been his dad who said lower your shields.
Oh, maybe that was. Oh, maybe you might be right. Maybe though. Either way, I love Troy Riker scene, and it just made me love both of them even more.
That's another kind of trope in a sense of there being some kind of special relationship when you have a being like a betazoid who can read people, and then we're together because I can't read. You're the one person in the universe or world that I can't read their mind in this way, and we're meant for
But the same kind of read. I thought they were kind of saying that in the sense of I usually can read you, and right now I can't.
Yep, I think
which makes sense.
Oh,
you might makes sense.
You might be right. Maybe I was just misinterpreting at the time.
Because they brought up a number of times how they have a special connection.
Right.
Yeah, my dad's here, and I'm blocking about that, and I'm not trying to let on how I feel about this possible Starship change.
Aha.
So I think that's all my main Riker notes. My other ones are random, probably Riker notes, but
I have one last Riker note, and that's my last note for the episode, which is really just the way that it was. Everything seemed to be resolved. And I put that it was comical, but it was also appropriate because they didn't dwell on his decision to stay. They treated you like, we know that he's going to stay. So, however, we just kind of like throw this, kind of like they didn't like spend like 10 minutes on him talking about how he's going to do it. It was just sort of like a throwaway toward the end. You know what? I'm not going to go. You, the audience, already saw me hash this out with my dad. We're just going to show you the revelation when I tell the rest of the crew that I'm not going. Fine. You didn't have to have like a different heart-to-heart with everybody in the crew. Like, I've decided I'm not going to do this and blah, blah, blah. You convinced me to. No, it's just, we know you're not going to go.
He doesn't need the heart-to-heart, but I would have liked some connection drawn between his dad's situation and him turning down the promotion.
Yep.
What do you mean? What? Expand on that.
Just something that his dad says or something within his interaction makes something click that helps him to make the decision. I didn't see that connection. And I would have really I think that would have kicked this episode up several notches, and it could have been a 1 or 2 line change, but they didn't make the connection there.
Yeah, because I don't feel like they're not saying it's, oh, Picard, you're my dad, or this is my family here.
Yep.
I don't think there's a connection.
Interesting. I guess I didn't catch that.
Well, yeah, there wasn't anything to catch. That was the problem. It was a good story, but it could have been a great story with a few tweaks. So it was
I think that's an excellent summation of this episode. It was good. Could have been great.
So let's jump over to Worf. The first note I have on that is Data talking about there's a genetic disposition for Klingons to be hostile, which I was like, oh, you're a racist, Data. But also he's right.
Yeah.
It is one of those things they do in Star Trek that
paint a species with a broad brush.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know how much that has changed in more modern series. I don't feel like they. I mean, I certainly in Voyager, I didn't feel like they harped on that too much.
I think they still do that in Voyager.
What's that? You say they did or did not?
I think they still do that in Voyager. I think Discovery maybe they didn't. But.
Well, I mean, you got B'Elanna, who's at least half human
and half Klingon.
Yeah, at least. I mean, or at most, I would say. I thought there might have even been some other thing about her being quarter something. I guess we'll find out. My point is that it didn't feel like it was much a part of the narrative as it was in earlier episodes like this in Next Generation, where they really needed to, obviously it's their thing of like, here's how you should process you the audience in real life. Here's how you should process other races that are not white and how you should think of them as being anyway. Yeah,
and maybe it's definitely that 1989 thing as opposed to 2020 or whatever, where it's because I think the intention's probably good, because I think now we would say, cultures are different. I don't know we'd broad brush them, but we'd say, I think there's no doubt that the American culture or state of mind, not state of mind, but American way, for lack of a better term, unfortunately, as diverse as we are, or like to say we are, but now I know, no matter how I say it, it's still going to sound racist.
No. I think I see where you're going in the sense of, as far as the way that they've always represented the quote unquote human race in the Star Trek series. It is sort of through the lens of how the American ideal of the time period.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So it's these guys are this way, rather than, well, their culture is different than ours. And because I think that's kind of the conversation we have now is, and thank God we do. And we white people don't know what we're talking about. You help us understand your culture. And I feel like, and I guess this gets back to my thing I've been doing since TOS, which is get to know your Vulcan and get to know your Klingon, which this episode's a perfect illustration of. They do, but Data starts off on a bad foot to start off on.
Yep.
This has been one of my roads to hoe, so to speak, as far as, there is no simple answer as far as incorporating different ethnic experiences and so on. But one of the problems I certainly have as an individual is just the idea of, I don't think that trying to tailor ethnic experiences is something that necessarily serves everybody involved. And I think that ends up being sort of limiting and pigeonholing the idea that you have to have something. You can't have people of color involved in something unless it is something that very specifically serves what should be their quote unquote interests or their experience, as opposed to just letting them be in certain kinds of roles that that don't focus on the fact that they are people of color.
Yep. That reminds me of Brooklyn Nine-Nine, which has released several podcasts lately in conjunction with like the Good Place podcast. And they talk about how they have 2 Latina women as leads on that show. And both of them were convinced that they weren't going to get cast because there can only be one Latino lead on a show. What are you talking about?
There you go.
And then neither one of them are written anything like a stereotypical Latina at all. And they're just people. And I think Star Trek's getting around to that now, but I think in the 80s it was still very much what you're talking about.
Well, now you're selling me on that because, as Jimmy knows, of course, we were both very big Good Place fans.
What?
And
I hate that show.
And I hadn't realized that they were all, they were also involved, or some of the same people were involved with Brooklyn Nine-Nine. Because every time I would see like anything about it, just like the little commercials they do, or I'd be watching it, like I was maybe DVRing something after that. It was always like, God, this doesn't seem funny at all. It's like, how is this even working? Why are people into this? And I just have to just buckle down and take a look at it because I just keep hearing such great things from everybody about it, and I don't know. So
Terry Crews alone is worth your time. Anyway, so then Wesley realizes there's something wrong, and he takes it to LaForge and Data, and they're like, "You're right. You figure it out." And I love that.
That was fun. I guess my only actual written note about the Worf subplot was up toward the beginning when I put about Worf's outburst when we're interacting with Wesley. I said it was almost like a deconstruction, like almost like a fourth wall deconstruction of the annoyance that someone would feel if you're trying to walk them through like the exposition of what is happening in the situation. It's Wesley saying, "Hey, why don't you talk to me about like, why don't you explain to us how this is, how do you feel about this?" I should put like the halftime report from IABD.
Yeah.
Hey Cheryl, what did you think about this thing was happening earlier in the episode? And Worf was like, God, shut up.
That's perfect.
So then after they blow Wesley off, we get Geordi and Data in 10 forward, like watching Worf. And Geordi's totally scared of going up to Worf. And then Data's like, I'm just going to go talk to him. And he does. And Worf's like, be gone, sir.
I love that scene.
It's so good.
I laughed so hard. That might be the hardest I've laughed, maybe in any Star Trek episode.
Yeah.
Intentionally. It was so funny. It was great.
Yeah.
I loved it. And, I think I read that was an added scene because initially they took that scene out, but then they decided they added it back to add it back in. So,
I'm glad they did. It was
it was so good. It was so good.
I liked Worf asking to join Riker's crew. You're almost like, that's my alternate episode. I want to go see Riker and Worf on a ship together. I mean, we only get hints of that like in the final movie. We never get to, and there's some novels where Riker and Troy are off on their own starship, but Worf doesn't go with them then because Worf has to stick around and be the new first officer. But
and also there's the love triangle thing at that point, probably.
That's past. That's long gone by then because that's just briefly at the end of Next Gen. That doesn't carry into the movies much.
That's my alternate episode as well. Is Riker goes ahead and leaves, and they do a spinoff.
I thought this episode had very 80s schmaltzy music. I guess that's just a random note in there somewhere.
Yeah, on that note, I thought every cut to commercial was real brutal. They were just real brutal. Like, I know we always talked about the stingers on the old series.
I love that so much.
These were painful. They were just like, oh.
And I think it's notable because Next Gen's not been bad about it. And now this and that's why this episode stuck out.
I think that's why I noticed whenever it happens, and this one was just like, oh my God. Oof.
I didn't note it. I mean, usually if I notice it, I will write it down for myself as something that some of it is, of course, if we can just like go behind the curtain for how we do this. Usually, this is further advanced from the time that I watched it than usual. So I think I watched this a couple of days ago. Yeah. Usually, when we come to this, since we started this format of it, I usually go like day of because I want to be able to just like refer right back to this thing I was remembering. But yeah, I can't remember the music right now. What's that?
I have to do night before because if I wait till day of, I'm working all day.
Yeah.
I can maybe do one episode at lunch, but
yeah. And Keith, I don't think it was the music so much as the dramatic. It was like you were watching a daytime soap opera. No, I don't mean to disparage daytime soap operas, but it was like if you've seen Tootsie and the dramatic with the music and the zoom in. It was to me it was that level of without the music, even without the music. Music wise, whatever. It didn't match the old series as far as cheesy, but just where they cut and the line they cut and the shot they took and on the character, it was just super cheese. And it was I feel like it was always Riker and his dad is one of those scenes. And I almost felt like the line was very similar each time.
So we're getting closer to the Age of Ascension Ceremony, which nicely named. I'll give him credit for that. I liked O'Brien checking in with Data and Geordi, and I think we referenced the scene earlier because they're all just hanging out there. And then Wes comes. He's like, "Hey, O'Brien, you want to come to this thing?" And O'Brien's like, "Sure." And I just like how casual that was. It was great. And it's almost as great as when Troy is walking Riker there and our Worf there, and he's like, "Are you coming in?" And she's like, "No," and walks away. Just the different attitudes.
It's almost, and this is way too early for it to be a Seinfeld thing, other than the Seinfeld part of this podcast, but it's almost a Kramer thing. Like, I was just watching the episode last night. It's where George is like, "Oh, I gotta go help my dad fix the screen door. You want to go out to Queens?" And Jerry's like, "No." And then he asks Kramer. He's like, "Yeah, giddy up." So yeah, I think O'Brien, he's like the Kramer of Enterprise.
I loved what we found out about O'Brien here between the invitation and how willing he was, and then his animal head exploding story. I was just like, man, I love O'Brien in this episode. O'Brien, and
this
we're gonna get
that guy.
O'Brien.
I was going to note something to that effect. That this, I think, was one of the first episodes where it felt like O'Brien was becoming an actual character, and they're starting to develop him in some fashion of giving him a personality.
Yeah, I mean. Of the characters that we're going to see more of in the future, I'm counting all the leads here. I think O'Brien is the character right now that we know that will have the most screen time left of Star Trek from here on forward because of his long tenure on Deep Space Nine. And he does dozens of Next Gen episodes before he does 7 full seasons of DS9. And then Worf's probably second because after his 7 seasons, he does 4 seasons of Deep Space Nine. So we get lots of Worf and O'Brien going forward. And the rest of these guys, not as much. Although the Picard series is helping us fix that. I like that the Klingon ceremony, they had to admit their feelings as part of it. It wasn't just the pain.
That is interesting.
Really cool and complex, and really gave us some more insight into that culture. I really feel like now is when they start to develop the Klingons as a culture.
So it's like a sweat TP. You say your feelings and you experience pain.
I guess. To me, it didn't make a lot of sense why you'd say your feelings when you're being subjected to pain, and that to me made it feel alien and original and interesting.
Maybe it's more like that show where the people eat wings and answer questions. Eat hot wings and answer questions.
I did wonder.
Hot ones or something, or
You just say whatever you want. I guess that's more of a torture thing than a ask you. But
I think this ties into what I was saying before about like how did I phrase this before? Just something about the antiquated manly emotional thing of like we can't admit our feelings unless we are also balancing that with some sort of violent act. Yeah. And I think that ties into both, Riker and his father, and also the Klingon way of just like we are always so masculine and violent. We can't do anything vulnerable unless we are also doing something that shows how tough we are.
Could be, but why even include that at all if you're just trying to be masculine and tough? I just thought it was cool that they included it.
No, it's cool, but I'm just saying. What I'm saying. This is again just the dated way that they have to express things. This is just the late '80s. This is the early '90s. This is just the way.
I didn't take this dated at all. I thought it was very alien. But maybe that's just my read. I did wonder, are the safety protocols off in the holodeck for this? Can Worf actually get super hurt? And otherwise, why would you do it at all?
Well, I mean, I guess that goes to the question of, this is something that I wouldn't have considered before, actually. How does pain and combat work in the holodeck? Because they have training simulations, obviously, for that purpose. Well, so there must be some level of...
I think you can't get seriously injured. is supposed to be what the protocols are. But clearly,
unless something, and I know this never happens in the holodeck, unless something goes wrong, unless something should go wrong with the ship's computer and the holodeck. But yeah, I think it's like setting your food in the replicator. You set your pain threshold.
So
and, yeah,
there were two personalities that appeared as Klingon extras in this episode.
Yeah, I saw one of them. I don't know. John Tesh is one.
I was gonna say John Tesh was the bigger one. Obviously, composer, pop music, television host, sportscaster, radio host. John Tesh, and then Joseph Cannon, who I'm not familiar with, but he's got a bunch of credits as an actor, director, and writer. And he did appear on an episode of The Orville as Mocklin Delegate Number 2.
Yeah.
So, still active, still around. Thought it was kind of cool they included. John Tesh is very random, but I think he was another fan, and he was big enough at that point to get his way on the show.
Uh-huh.
So
they mentioned at some point, I think maybe it's Riker's dad had the flu.
Oh, I missed that.
Which is a problem because they cured the common cold. Shouldn't they have cured the flu?
Two different diseases.
Yeah,
what's the thing about the flu? I don't remember that.
Well, they said that somebody had a touch of the flu. I think it was Pulaski mentioned it. In my mind, it was Riker's dad, maybe it was somebody else. But I feel like the reason we have flu vaccines is because we kind of know the flu and what it does. The reason we can never cure the common cold is we don't know what it does. But if they cure the common cold in the future, they have to have cured the flu.
We're close to curing the flu. We're not close to curing the cold.
Yeah,
so it's a new mutation or a new version disease that just has similar symptoms, and they just call it that.
I want them to call it a specific flu, not just the flu.
But we don't call it specific flus now.
As far as the quote unquote, as far as the quote unquote common cold, maybe Stephen is touched on the secret to COVID right there. I mean, there are certain similarities there. Maybe that's how it works. Maybe it's like the cold version of immunosuppression.
Yeah. I don't know.
I think we should send this into the CDC.
Speaking of cold, what's a cold minute? Because somebody, I think as Riker says, oh, they'll do that in a cold minute.
It's like a hot minute, but in the future.
So it's like a New York minute? Okay.
It's a hot minute in space.
I enjoyed when, I think it was, I can't remember if it was Wesley or who it was like, I think it was Wesley, it was like, yeah, I checked the Klingon cultural database, or as the kids call it, the KCD. In my mind, it's Klingon Wiki. So that's how he learned about the whole ceremony?
And apparently he had to hack to get it, because most people
that's right.
access to it.
I wrote this, actually I'll stick with Klingons. Did they say they're called Klingon pain sticks?
Yes.
That's the best they could come up with? Klingon pain sticks?
That's just what it translates to in English. That's why it's clunky.
Okay.
Nice.
I'll accept
They're really
That's what I don't remember who said this, but it made me laugh. Maybe it's not a professional and an android. I'd feel insulted. Is that Data says that?
I don't remember.
Dang it. I need to do better with that. My last note is, so who flew too close to the sun? Was it Riker?
Yeah, that's a good question, because I don't think Riker flew too close to the sun. I don't think Kyle flew too close to the sun.
There's the dad-son thing. So dad, son, and the sun. So is it Riker? Yeah, I don't.
No, I understand.
It's
not so much about flying too close to the sun as it was about the relationship between Icarus and Daedalus. I think they were saying that Icarus trying to imitate his father was the danger of all that.
That makes sense. All right.
More cultured than we.
Good job. That is my last note.
Back for another week.
You earned your keep. As Kirk would say to Scotty, you earned your keep. You got your job back.
Your keep.
That was my last note.
Keith, did you have any more notes?
Nope, that was it.
Scale of 1 to 10, how annoying was Wesley?
I give him a 2.
This is tough, actually, because
I'm going to go with 2 as well. He was slightly annoying, but not ridiculously so.
It was like they were doing it purposefully and comically, and it worked for the comedic effect of it.
And the other characters, like, trying to get a rise out of him kind of made it all fit.
Yeah.
For me.
Yeah.
2. Yeah.
Okay,
fine.
2 across the board.
I thought that whole element of, it wasn't even boys being boys, just those 4 just being idiots, or the 3 of them trying to be idiots trying to help in a good way. I thought that was just so much fun.
Yeah, because it was from a very well-meaning place, and it was genuine. They wanted to be his family.
legitimately funny things because it comes out of those relationships and what we've learned about them over the season. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I enjoy those.
Absolutely. 2 is his second highest annoyance or third highest annoyance ranking this season so far.
All right.
So this was as annoying as he's been getting. Steven, who was your annoying character?
Riker's dad. Yeah.
Me too. And I like him, but there were things about him that felt inconsistent to me.
Yeah, he's a good actor, and I think there's a good character there. We just didn't get enough.
Yeah, and I don't think it was the actor's fault, honestly.
Yeah, I don't either, because I like that guy.
Keith?
Well, I mean, as much as I would like to be the outlier, I mean that it makes the most sense. We were all there with that kind of character, that father figure who was
crush of Star Trek.
There was a bartender at 10 forward, and I could not take my eyes off her. But then I could not find anything out about her, so I'm going to stick with
Vanessa.
Vanessa,
you're not going to go with the bartender, huh?
I thought about it, but I wanted a little more to grab onto, and I don't mean that in a physical way. I wanted more to grab onto there, but I'll be keeping my eyes open for her in later episodes. I mean, like even in the Star Trek wiki, I couldn't even find that person referenced.
Interesting.
So, let alone an actress.
I was actually tempted to go with Kyle Riker because I kind of many times wished my own dad would be a little more forward with his speaking and all that, and also like he seemed relatively cool, but then the annoyance part of him was like, nope, I'm going to stick with Anya Teenage Girl.
That's an interesting point, actually. Just that I guess there is that, man. In addition to what I was saying before about like the work-life persona, which I think we don't really have to experience as much, certainly because we're not in the future, and also we have our lives tied in the military in that sense. But just the wish fulfillment. Yeah, that's the term I was looking for the fan base they had at the time, thinking that, yes, you wish that your father would interact with you in that sense, and this is something we're holding up this ideal. He may be like all this, for your entire life, but secretly this is what he wants to say to you or something.
Yeah. So, Keith, you going with Kyle or are you sticking with Solar?
Yeah,
Kyle wasn't enough for me to buy it this time. So
okay.
Real quick, I did think of another alternate episode. I want to see Riker's dad and Pulaski, their courtship, which I think would be akin to a Skinamax movie, but yeah.
Probably.
So I'd still like to see it.
I agree. I agree. Where do we want to rank the episode? Start in the middle somewhere?
Yeah, I think that's a good starting place.
Let's start with the outrageous Okana. Kyle Riker wasn't quite outrageous, but it seems as good a place as any.
I think that's a perfect range for it. This might be the opposite of recency bias. In my mind, outrageous Okana, I have almost a nostalgic feel for it. I think I like that better than this.
I would disagree. I mean, I feel for the one point I made earlier about all this is that this was like effortless sci-fi in the sense of them not trying too hard to make it sci-fi.
Yeah,
this is just everyday life with some good characterization. We got Worf and Riker. They're really digging in and showing us things about them that we didn't know before, especially with Pulaski. That's why I would probably rank this fairly high.
So recency bias is what you're saying. No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
no, certainly that plays a part because I probably won't remember this feeling in a couple episodes later. But that's the way I felt about it coming out of it. I was like, you know what, they did a good job of like giving us some stuff without making it too. They weren't trying too hard to show us it.
No, I think those are good points. Those are good points actually.
I agree with you, Stephen, on feeling the Okana bigger than it probably was. But I also agree with Keith. I think this was better. Despite my issues with Kyle, I'm actually feeling worse about the episode now than right after I watched it. But despite my issues with Kyle, the stuff with Pulaski, Riker, O'Brien, Worf, Geordi, Wesley, it goes up for me.
Yeah. I think you guys convinced me.
Okay, above that's Unnatural Selection where Pulaski gets old.
Oh, God. Really?
I definitely liked it better than that.
Me too.
Why is that so high? It's like, wait,
outrageous Okana we didn't really like.
That's so funny. It's like, what?
Above that's the Royale with cheese.
Oh, the casino?
Yeah.
Oh.
Now I think we're getting close to that range.
Yeah. I
feel like there were higher highs in this one, but there were also lower lows.
What's above the Royale?
The Child.
Wow.
I think I'm gonna have to vote for it below The Child. I just think The Child's a more cohesive episode.
Yeah, certainly. But I think this might be above the Royale because of the things I was saying before.
I think that's right. I think that's where I'd land. Yeah.
I think the Royale was also more cohesive, so that's where I'd be tempted. But given how great the character moments, I'm not going to argue that we can put it above the Royale, which ranks at number 6 for the season.
Huh.
Hated it.
Of 14. 6 of 14, so really middle. Very middling.
Yep.
Next week, we will be watching Pen Pals. Data befriends an alien girl in distress, breaking the Prime Directive, while Wesley commands his first team. Also, I see Picard in a horseback riding outfit on the back of a horse. So take that as you will.
This sounds like it was aired on a Saturday morning instead of a Saturday night in 1989. But
you could be right. Little girl, Wesley in charge. It does feel like a kid's episode.
I'm looking forward to it, though.
We'll find out next week. Until then, we're going to try to live long.
And prosper.
Perhaps, yes.
I have to go to my pain stick session. It's pain stick yoga.
I got to go call my dad.
Yeah, I got to do pain stick yoga. It's the only way I feel anything.
It's All Been Done presents
Who's Got the Time?